Hello, everybody. Once again, here we are looking at this chess position, which is near the end of the middle game and getting ready to transfer into the ending. And this game is again from the All-Russian St. Petersburg tournament, famous tournament that took place in 1909. With the white pieces is a player named Boris Maliutin, and with the black pieces is Alexander Alekhine, a young Alexander Alekhine, about 16 to 17 years old at the time, but playing very strong. Now, I skipped the opening on purpose because I want to discuss this ending. Right here, um, White just played Rook H1, and Alekhine decides to go into the ending here. So Queen G5 check, Queen takes G5, Bishop takes G5, check, and then King B1. This is an interesting position. Again, if you want to pause the video and set this up on your board, and I will look at this position about 15, 20 minutes. Um, just try to figure out what's going on. Who you think is better, if anybody is better. Just your general assessment of the position. This is, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, this is where your improvement in chess really takes place is in the analysis. This is why a lot of players, everybody can play the opening, especially nowadays, like a grandmaster. If you look at enough videos and you go to chess base and you order, how to play the French or how to play this and that. And what's funny about it is that even with all the information out there, the average player today is still only about 15, 1600. Um, it's because you know chess is not that it's really hard, but it's just so much more than just basically copying grandmaster play and copying openings. I mean, you could copy Kramnik's games in the Berlin. You could look until you're blue in the face. You would not be able to play like that until you gain the inside outs, the understandings that those masters have. And in this ending, hopefully, I can bring out some things that I picked up. And usually, I mean, I look at a game like 5 years ago, and then like 5 years later, I'll see something that I just totally just didn't see before. It's amazing because there's definitely levels to this chess understanding here. So just bear with me. So we're looking at this ending right here, and the first thing to notice is just again the material. All the pawns are even. 6 pawns per side. The rooks, knights, and everything, is all the same. Um, Looking at the development, we can see kind of why Black opted for an end game here. Look at his back rank queenside pieces in particular. Um, all situated on the back rank still. White is ahead of in development. He has an open H file where his rook is sitting. He's castled queenside. So definitely the trade of queens helped ease Black's worry. His king was like in the middle of the board, although he has those pawns there. Another thing to realize is that Black possesses the pair of bishops. Now he has a bad bishop on C1 that excuse me C8 that he has to deal with. Um, and you often get that in positions like a Queen's Gambit declined. It happens in the French, so you can almost imagine what um, opening this position evolved from, or you can try to guess at it. Like I said, I wanted to start from this position on purpose because I don't even want you thinking about the opening, but more or less thinking of the strategy of both sides and how to continue in this position. Now, after King B1, Alekhine played the move A6, and one of the ideas behind A6 is to keep pieces off of B5, of course, right? Keep the knight off primarily. And also there's a idea of expanding also on the queen side. The idea of destroying this central pawn. Also note that of great importance is that black has a nice solid just pawn island, right? Just one, all these pawns are connected, right? Which is fantastic. So he has a nice big pawn majority, 6 pawns, right? All connected, and white has 2 pawn islands, 4 pawns, and then 2. So with this pawn structure, you would be trying to, develop or devise a plan on how to advance. And again, you want to destroy this pawn if you can. So definitely moves like b5, c5 are in the mix. As far as piece development is concerned, moves like knight d7 come to mind, of course, in combination with c5. If you can't, c5 doesn't work, ideas of f6 and e5 later on, especially with the ideas of freeing this bishop. These are all just strategic concerns that should pop into one's mind. White played knight f3. So, hitting this bishop, supporting this pawn, in some cases wanting to utilize the outpost provided by the d4 pawn and settle in here. So even though the queens are gone, white still has some attacking ideas. For instance, putting the rook on the 7th rank. Right? Even ideas like having the rook here, right, opposed to the king. And then black has to watch out for these type of tactics. Okay. Bishop coming here on the diagonal, that's another idea. Alright. So he still has attacking ideas in mind. One thing that that black would like to do is prevent the use of these potential outposts for these knights. Seeing that he has, the knight pair, so to speak. So moves like f6 and b6 down the road come into play. I like Alekhine's next move here because although this bishop on c8 is not a factor right now, later on it has the potential to be. So, as any good chess player would do, he preserves the bishop here by moving it out the way. And he doesn't make a totally defensive move. He could have came to e7, but I like that he moves it back, but he keeps the pressure on this pawn. White plays the move g3, right? So he decides, hey, I'm going to fianchetto this bishop. Why does he do that? Well, he could try to move it out to d3 or something like that, but then he has to address the problem of what to do with the g2 pawn. So he kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone here by playing g3. He puts the brakes on this on this rook here on g8, and he plans on simply placing the bishop on g2. Here, Alekhine plays knight c6. Now, he puts more pressure on the d pawn, but I believe this is an inaccuracy here, in that he should be striving to play knight d7, c5, and b5 here. Okay, that makes more sense. Knight c6 puts some nominal pressure on d4, but there's no way that black can really add any additional pressure here. So bishop g2, bishop d7 from Alekhine, and the idea of castling queenside comes up, and then further more after that playing rook h8. However, white has moves too, and white simply plays rook h7. So now black can't really consider castling queenside right now because of the attack on the f7 pawn. Alekhine is astute, and instead of letting white just double up on the file. He attacks immediately. Okay, and rook takes h8, bishop takes h8, and now rook h1. Now, important consideration here, the bishop is attacked. Now, some of you would just maybe castle queenside, but that's not in the proper spirit here, because there's no need to put the king way over here right now. Alekhine plays what I believe is the best move here is king e7. King now takes care of the bishop, and the king is in the center of the board where it should be to facilitate the advance of these pawns. Knight e2. And why knight e2? Well, black has some trouble right here with these pawns, with this pawn right here. The bishop is attacking it, and the knight. Okay, so this was Alekhine's idea, right? So first he attacks it with the pieces, right? He, like I said, the other plan was knight d7, b5, c5, but first he wants to just see if he could just win it outright with the pieces. He maintains this structure. Now, of course, he can't win it. A knight e2 happens, and now bishop f6. Why knight e2? First, he protects the pawn, right, as opposed to doing a move like rook d1, right? You don't want to put your rook just on defensive duty like that. Okay, so king e7. Black's king is centralized and prepared for the advance of these pawns. So again, instead of rook d1, knight e2 is played in order to prepare the advance of the c pawn to c3, and just basically support the c pawn and end the the controversy over how to protect this pawn. So knight e2, and now black plays bishop f6, and this position is equal. Okay, so don't get it confused and think that there's some great advantage here. It's an equal position, but these are the types of positions that people, grandmasters and amateurs alike, will lose, right? Every time there's imbalances in the position. There's this pawn islands. White has 2 pawn islands, black has none. Black has the 2 bishops, and this is the type of position where there's enough play involved that basically the higher skilled player, or the more alert player, can win this type of position. And this is where your true chess ability will come out. I could show you some of my games where the positions are like dead, like equal. And matter of fact, I'm just looking for one right now. Yeah, maybe I'll make another video just showing another game where you just outplay you outplay opponents from these type of positions, because you have like just more understanding in position. So here, why bishop f6? Alekhine is simply gonna address this issue on the h file, and he's gonna bring his rook to h8. That's the idea. So first, white plays c3. Okay, and now rook h8. Rook takes, bishop takes. Okay. Again, notice how black just maintains the bishop here. And now black's idea here is to create a passed pawn by advancing the f pawn and then the e pawn. Okay. Now, one of the downsides, I didn't mention this, but one of the downsides of playing knight e2 was that once the knight comes back, it relinquishes the pressure off of this pawn. Notice that as long as this knight is here, as long as this knight is here, putting pressure on d5 is very difficult for, say, for instance, f6 and e5 to come off, because there's always this threat to capture that pawn. So after knight e2, bishop f6 and c3. c3 fortifies the d pawn, but it also um, creates like a static weakness in white's pawn structure, whereby these pawns become immobile. As long as they're, set up in this chain link, they're all right. But as soon as one moves, for instance, like that, then you see the c pawn gets weak, or if the c pawn moves, the d pawn becomes weak. So even though this pawn chain looks good, it becomes ossified, right, and rigid. This is a factor later on, because once the pawn chain becomes fixed like that, then it can be attacked. Let's keep an eye out. So bishop takes h8, knight f4 from Maliutin, right? And what is this move about? It's not just a random move, ladies and gentlemen. Alekhine, he understands, he's a strong chess player in his own right. Alekhine wants to play this idea of f6, e5, and just create a pass pawn eventually. And this has an idea of coming here with this check. So if, f6, and the knight will jump in there. So bishop e8. Remember, this bishop is bad right now. So bishop e8 addresses the situation now after f6. So again, killing two birds with one stone. Alekhine wants to push the pawn and give the bishop some air. King c2, just coming a little bit closer to the center. Bishop g7. Okay, just improving the bishop. So now the bishop has some more squares. Instead of just being back here, now it can move around a little bit. These are subtle moves here. Knight h4. Again, try to discourage Alekhine from, going along with this plan, the f6. Now notice, with the bishop not here anymore, that fork idea is eliminated. Because remember, when I showed you, when the bishop was here, there was this check, this idea. So now he plays f6. Okay. Bishop h3. Attacking the pawn here. Okay. So trying to give white some problems. Of course, this would just be a strategic error. It's a terrible move to play a move like that. f5. Not only is does this pawn become backwards, there's there's tactical shots here. For instance, bishop takes 5, e takes, and knight takes here. Right, just losing a whole bunch of pawns. Okay, and this has to be good for white here. Okay, and c7 is gonna fall also. So I'll say after bishop g6, I don't know, king d2, and let's just make him attack again. Okay, white has some chances here to win, to actually win. Right, I definitely think he can draw, but he has all of these pawns. Right, it's 3 pawns for the piece, and that's not what you're going for here. And plus, that's a move I would never make. It just doesn't look right. That move looks crazy to me. f5, and just on making this pawn backward like that. It's a crazy looking move. But I just wanted to show as an example. So this is a provocative move, because something has to be done about this pawn. So Alekhine keeps calm, and he plays the move bishop to f7. Now what if check, right? Do you give up the bishop here? Of course not. That's one of your pluses in the position. You just simply play king d6, and this is where the chess understanding comes in. That's why I say don't waste your time studying openings. Learn learn how to play chess. Learn the things, little things like that. Because that's what's going to help you get stronger, is understanding the principles. A lot of amateurs, and I always beat this into the ground, a lot of amateurs, like beginning players, concentrate so much on the openings. And then if they lose a game, they want to blame it on the opening. And it has nothing to do with the opening. It's just your understanding of chess has to increase. But what it is players will jump from opening to opening thinking that's the solution. Buy another opening book or look at another opening video. That's not it. Let's keep going though. So after bishop f7, dealing with the threat to e6, white plays the move b3. Now b3 causes a slight weakening over here to this pawn chain we talked about. Right? It's not a big deal, but it's a slight weakening because remember, to defend this pawn is kind of fixed here. You see, he can't really ever play that because this pawn will be under attack. So b3 kind of weakens the chain a little bit. Notice how Alekhine keeps his structure intact. He just plays king d6, right? He just improves the king. Okay? And when it's the right time, he will be able to play this move. Another provocative move. A tactical shot based on the fork of this bishop and the king right here. So, of course, this would be a terrible mistake. Right? This would be a terrible mistake here. E takes f5 and knight takes f5 check, dropping the bishop and ruining the pawns, right? And dropping a pawn to boot. So how does he deal with that? He just plays knight e7. Now he attacks the bishop for real. But what I like about Alekhine's choice here is he economizes. He kills two birds with one stone. Not only does he deal with the threat, but he mobilizes these pawns here on the queen side. So bishop g4, and now he plays this move b6. Now in preparation later on for the move c5, because once these pawns are fixed, like I said, they make great targets. e5 was also possible here. Just a sample line. Again, preserving the bishop here. And I think a slick move here is a move like bishop h7 because of the pin here. But Alekhine opts for b6. Notice that with this move b6 in combination with f6, notice how the knights, the outposts we spoke about earlier, are now eliminated. So these knights are kind of suspect in the position. Right? They don't have any homes really. Bishop h5. Right? Wanting to trade off bishops. Alekhine drops back. See, he understands that this is a plus in the position for him, is having the pair of bishops. So he hangs on to him, right, as long as possible. You don't want to just give up like small advantages like that in the position unless you have some type of compensation. Maybe if he was winning the pawn or creating a pass pawn, in other words, transferring that advantage to another advantage. You just don't want to give up the your small advantage for nothing, right? That's a principle in chess. And one thing I always remember that Nimzovich said in the book Blockade is that that the that a player, right, in order to become a strong player, you must get used to you must learn to appreciate the accumulation of small advantages, because when you first starting out, you like the big attacks and stuff like that. You know, that usually draws a lot of people to chess when they first start playing, because they see like a brilliant game, like, like Morphe games, or the Evergreen game or Kasparov. You see these sacrifices and you want to do that. Like you see like games by Tal and stuff. But the true mastery of the game entails appreciating the accumulation of small advantages throughout the game. So having the bishop here is a small advantage. Like right here, it doesn't seem like nothing, because it's like the bishop's on g8 and g7. It's like big deal, right? But you can see here that Alekhine at 17 years old appreciates having the bishop here, right? He keeps it. He just doesn't give it up, right? For nothing. And you'll learn there are certain things like this creating a pass pawn, or having more space than your opponent, right? Having your pawns be mobile on the wing against a mobile pawn structure, like those little things like that, you know, um, are very important. Even in this position, right? Looking at it from the white side, this G6 square, right? This square is very important. It's annoying. It's annoying that for black that these pieces had this access to this square. That's a small advantage, right? That's something that white has, right? That keeps, the balance in the game. It's not that white doesn't have anything going for himself, right? It's like it's a battle of ideas. So black has these two bishops. White has access to this square. This is a weak square. G6 is weak for black. Let's keep going. So he jumps in. Knight F takes G6. Knight takes G6. Bishop takes G6. Okay. So a couple of pieces are traded. The knights are traded. And I think that the status and the position still is pretty much the same, right? That it's equal. Like nobody really should have any advantage, but black has the slightest of advantages, and I would just say that's based on the connected nature of his pawns and the fact that he has his king in the center, right? Closer to the center than the white king, and he has this ability to play c5. Like his pawns are more flexible than whites are, right? Accumulation of small advantages. So there it is now, c5. Okay, now white is faced with the dilemma, because if he allows black to capture here, then he ends up with the isolated pawns right there. Of course, this pawn would be gone too. If he captures, he loses his then black center looks like that, right? So he wants to prevent e5 at all costs. This is his idea. So he plays f4. Okay. And now the idea for white is saying, hey, now if you take, I don't mind taking the isolated pawn, because we'll both have these weaknesses. One is the isolated pawn here, and for black it'd be this backward pawn. Okay, so Alekhine looks for more than that, and he plays the move b5. Okay, now white plays the move g4. Now this move g4 is interesting to me because it seems unnecessary. It's a provocative move in that once he does g4, this pawn right here is unprotected. And the only thing I can think of is white might have felt that, say, after bishop h6, for example, attacking the pawn, that he might be able to play this move, right? That was like his idea. But once he plays this move, then it kind of flies in the face of the idea of stopping e5, which would then give black a passed pawn. So I think that strategically, that g4 is an error. That he should have just simply kept these pawns together, right, on these dark squares, because right now they're doing a fine job blocking the bishop. And this bishop on g6 is a monster, as this bishop is immobilized. So I think that white should be trying to kind of just keep the position like looking really closed. You know, maybe if he wants to move a pawn, maybe move like b4, just forcing the issue. Because if black plays c4, again just closing the position, that's good for white because it works against the two bishops. Even if he exchanges here, there's no way to get in the position to win this pawn. This knight will always be able to drop back here. The king will always be able to come here if need be. And the same issue if he takes over here. You know, and then for instance with you know, this idea of bishop f8, you know, trying to attack this, white will always be able to swing the king over, even play a3 if he has to. So I think g4 was a mistake. Alekhine plays bishop h6, putting the pressure here. So now, what is white going to do? Now, he plays the move f5, so he goes along with it. He must have had a plan, and like I always say, a bad plan is better than no plan. That's from Frank Marshall. But this plan allows black to begin to outplay him. He should have acknowledged, you know, the error and just jump back with knight g2, defending. And the sample line could have went a5, for instance. Let's say a4, takes, bishop f8, c takes d, bishop e7, king d3, bishop d8, you know, bishop trying to get out, king c2, king e7, and again, there's really no way to make progress here. You know, it's really, you know, somebody, you know, it's a standoff. The bishops don't really shine in this position. So he went with f5. Now, Alekhine played the obvious move, e5. Now he's guaranteed to have a passed pawn here. And white is left with this backward pawn. Yes, he has a two pawn to one now, right? But he has his backward pawn. The bishop is guarding g5. So it seems like black has definitely gotten the better of this scenario. So now he plays knight f3, but it seems a little too late here. Alekhine just pushed e4, and now he has a dangerous, passed pawn here. Even stronger, according to my analysis, is just c takes d4 here. C takes d4, and then e4. Knight g1, and then b4. Okay, just this starts to paralyze paralyze white a bit. Now I understand why I think Alekhine didn't go in for this, because still, even though it looks very favorable and promising for black, it's hard to figure out exactly how he could penetrate in this position. But this will be a long game. It'll probably be an 80-90 move game, but I can see a scenario where, for example, the king, the black king comes back to e7, trades his bishop off, and then this king will then have access over here to these squares. And then with this bishop flying around, this would require constant protection. And then eventually, I believe that black would be able to utilize an endgame advantage. But I can see, looking at this position, that Alekhine could say, you know what, I need to leave the options open a little bit. So he played e4 right away. White played d takes c5 check, king takes c5, and knight d4. So now he's blockading the pawn. Now he's blockading the pawn d5. So now, yes, he has a passed pawn, but now what? Okay. Now there's two good moves here. That the first move that comes to my mind is this bishop e3, right, threatening to win the pawn, and then the knight has to move. But Alekhine played b4, undermining the knight here. Of course, if takes on b4, then the knight drops. This is pretty much forced. Knight e6. Okay. Now here's a tricky time here too, because of course you can probably win this pawn. Bishop takes bishop takes e6, f takes e6. Right, I'll show it to you. Right, some of you probably seen this real quick. Okay. And yeah, let's have this c takes, right? And here. Also, it's also possible just trying to, instead of taking, white can try to defend his e6 pawn here. But I think the other way is probably better. It's c takes and then king takes e6. Okay, now I can see right here. Now the first thing I'm thinking of on this move right here. Now Alekhine played king d6. Can you understand why he might have played that? And now we're not talking about whether he's right or wrong, but the key is that you understand the logic. Like why would he do this instead of just boom boom and just grabbing the pawn, right, one way or another? Now let me tell you why. The reason why, and again, this is not about him being right or wrong, because all of us are going to be right or wrong in analyzing positions sometimes. But the general principle is you got to be very careful about these opposite color bishop endings. Okay? So after he gives up the light square bishop, because you got to remember too, the bishop on g8 is pretty much bad the whole time, so you would love to exchange that thing off. But he's looking at the ending. He's looking at the ending after bishop takes. And he's like, man, he might be able to draw with this opposite color bishop. Okay. You got this 3-1 over here, right? Say he does, give up that pawn at e6. You got this 3-1. Yeah, black has these two passers, but there might be some scenarios where the king, he can draw here. Right? You have to do further analysis of the endgame, yourself to see for sure. But I think Alekhine just went on general principles like that. It wasn't clear enough where he saw a win with this opposite color bishop ending. So therefore he rejected it and just played king d6. Right? Just giving up the pawn here. So c takes b4. And notice he plays king e5. He still won't take. He doesn't play bishop takes e6. Right? He could have just won a pawn. Many people would have just took that pawn. And I'm not saying he's right or wrong. Maybe it was safe to take. But just on principle, he avoids any kind of situation where he might lose here. I'm sorry, not lose, but he might mess up his chance to win. Here's another thing that I did not mention about the position. Let's go back. After knight e6, and he played king d6. The other thing I didn't mention is that this bishop is out of play. Okay, so it's pretty much the knight just running around. So this bishop is out of play. This bishop is out of play. this bishop is in play, this guy's in play. So again, he just kind of keeps it what it is, right? This guy is off doing his own thing, and he just leaves him, kind of leaves him like that. So he doesn't exchange anything. He plays king e5, and there's really nothing that could be done here. This bishop, to get back in the game, has to go, try to, go around a long route, and there's really no way to get back in. It's not dangerous. It's on e6, but not attacking anything. So now knight c4, attacking this pawn. But look at that, 2 connected pass pawns. d4, check. Now what would you play here? He's gonna win the pawn here, and you gotta watch out for the, watch out for your bishop here. Alekhine's cold as ice, man. He played king f4 because he knows these 2 pawns are gonna win. Knight takes f6. And if you want, you could pause the video and calculate to the end. Set up the position on your board and calculate it all the way out to the end of the game. All right. So now I'll show you what happened. Alekhine played d3 check. I'm sure most of you seen that. King d1, e3, knight g8. The bad bishop, right, that's been bad most of the game, or the whole game, is finally just sacrificed. This bishop is attacked. Bishop g5, although e2 check can be played. f6. And now we have a mate in 7 here. e2 check, king d2. King e5, right? Notice king e5, discovered check. King d3 and this e1 queen, and that was all she wrote. If he tries to play a move like king e1, putting up more resistance, of course not d2 because he just captures this, but he's on a dark square. You just simply play bishop h4 check, and then after king d2, then you just queen there. All right, so that's how that game ended from that end game, and you can see why I didn't show you the opening, right? Because the outcome of the game really had nothing to do with the opening, right? It was just basically an equal position, and it was just a battle of ideas. And eventually what sunk White's boat was when he decided to advance and play this move f5. That's really what turned the tables. Right? He misevaluated the position. So I hope you learned a lot from that game, and please comment, like, and subscribe. And I will see you, and all questions, I'll try to answer. And again, I hope to see you on the next video.